All right. My name is Peter. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Grateful to be alive and sober and part of a sacred place called Alcoholics Anonymous. And first things first, thank the committee for this kind invitation to me to be here with you this weekend. Get to do a little workshop and tell you my story tonight. And I want to thank you guys for taking real good care of me. Call has been great. We had a really nice ride down from the airport. I was anticipating a 10-minute drive to the, here, and it was an hour. And I saw a few cows and a few horses. Welcome to Lincoln, get to see Morris and John. There's a warrant out for his arrest, so be careful. But it's really good to be here. And if we can just give it up for these guys for all the hard work they've done this weekend. So thank you. Loving God separated me from alcohol June 23rd, 1988. I'm a recovered alcoholic. And I say recovered because I am anything less than that great fact would be falsely humble. But a loving God took me from the scrap heap on the day of June 23rd, 1988, to my 7th and last treatment center, and he gets me here tonight to share with you for fun and for free. And for that, I'm grateful. To be an above ground, sucking air, and sober is a long way from where I was on the day of June 23rd, 1988. So I'm grateful to be here, and I get excited about these things, to talk about recovery, talk about our big book, to talk about our sacred fellowship, and really shout from the rooftops about the power of God and Alcoholics Anonymous, which is what AA, in my humble opinion, should be, a pep rally for the power of God and nothing less than that great fact. Because what we get to do in Alcoholics Anonymous is experience this power called God, where we get reborn and resurrected from the inside out. No longer trying to fix the external world to make me feel good, but going in order to go out. And that's something that's really neat. We do a countdown. We have a young lady here with just a really short time, and in a short time she'll be sponsoring people and on the other side of the count and passing this message on. And that's what I've gotten to see over the last few years that I'm sober. The way I walked in, where the fire is out, the eyes are dead, the spirit's quiet, and then we come around this sacred fellowship, which is a Band-Aid on an open wound when we get here. If you haven't found out the sacredness of Alcoholics Anonymous, I pray you stick around long enough to experience the sacredness of the circle around the triangle. And we come to get, we stay to give, and we're part of this glorious thing that's happening in the meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. My home group is the Deerfield Beach Big Book Study Group. I'm one of the founding members of that group. It's just 6 months old. It's a meeting where the book is the star and not the speaker. And we don't have sharing from the floor, but we have Q&A to the speakers. And we chop up the big book from the cover to Dr. Bob's Nightmare and start all over again. So I'm excited about being a member of that group. And we have people coming there, a lot of young folks coming with big book markers and pens and taking notes and asking really good questions. So it's not a dumping hour, but a learning and experiencing hour. And what I hope is some of the young folks in here, some of us older guys might know it, but while you're here, anyone can get an education in Alcoholics Anonymous. Anyone can study the big book and come back and give a big book talk. That's easy to do. And AA is really not a process of education, but a process of transformation from the inside out, where the big book and the 12 steps is fellowship. Your God becomes who you be. And sometimes you don't have to say a word. What you do and speak so loud, you don't have to say a word. The walk is changed. Our deportment is changed. The light in the eyes is on. The spirit speaks volumes when you walk into a room. My grand sponsor had that gift. He'd walk into a room and he just lit up the room. He did nothing, but he walked with God. And what we get to experience in Alcoholics Anonymous is no more separateness. There's no more me and God, but us. We walk with oneness with God. No more separateness. That's what we get to do. And I found that it's not only hanging around the fellowship that we'll get to experience this great abundance of God. It's by doing some work. And in Vision for You, it says patience, willingness, and labor to duplicate what the founding members did. Last I looked, labor meant work. And I'm going to get dirty. I'm going to get callous. I'm going to get bruised. I'm going to get tired. But I am going to get to experience God. And not only the obsession will be lifted, but even the thinking about drinking gets removed, which will ruffle a lot of middle-of-the-road solution meetings. I don't really care. We're here to talk about the truth. So God's not going to give me a loaded gun to go play with. He's going to remove the problem, which is what Step 10 talks about. And we get our spiritual wings in Alcoholics Anonymous, and off we go and take this glorious message into our homes, occupations, and affairs. We become agents for God. Ain't that great news? Ain't that great to tell her with just a short time what you can be doing in a short time? You don't have to hang around AA, but we can experience the abundance of life and pack into the stream and become pillars of our community and family members. Again, ain't that great? Our speaker Friday night talked at length about the importance of families and bringing this back. Because if you're anything like me, I infected my family. In the chapter Family afterwards, it talks about years of living with an alcoholic will make any child or wife neurotic. The whole families become ill. That's what I did to my family. They suffered from alcoholism, and none of them are alcoholic. But what we get to do in Alcoholics Anonymous is once we awaken with God, we go back there and suddenly the family becomes important. Our loved ones become important. Our jobs become important. And we take this message, this awakened spirit there, and things start to change. Because God is contagious. Just by living this life. And I've gotten to see a lot of that, not only in my life, but others. So I'm so grateful. I feel blessed. Every day above ground, I'm blessed. I get a lot of get-tos in Alcoholics Anonymous. I get to come here. I get to share. I get to meet some folks. I get to go back home. I get to go to work. I get to go to a doctor. I get to call a sponsor. I get to, because the alternative was drunk and dead. So Alcoholics Anonymous is really taking good care of me, and that's what I'm here to talk about. My life today is one of invitation. I have a life of invitation. You invited me here, I get to share. I get invited into my family's lives. I get invited into people's lives. I get invited into sponsees' life, one of invitation. And when my life looks like that, I'm no longer trying to fit in. You know, I was always trying to fit in and please like me so I can be part of your group. I don't need to do that anymore, but there's an invitation extended for me. With all the cracks in the armor, people extend invitations to me, and off I go for fun and for free. My life is one of prayer and meditation 3 times a day. That's where God has moved me. I didn't plan it that way, but my Heavenly Father moved me to prayer and meditation 3 times a day. I have a life of 10 and 11, then passing it on. A life of surrender and very focused, mindful of this moment and this breath because it's all I ever have. Yesterday's gone. Tomorrow, I have no idea what that's going to look like. But I knew right now in front of you, this is all I got. And the breath I take is my God breathing through me the way your God's breathing through you right now. I didn't plug into a 9-volt battery this morning. God woke me up. And God keeps pushing me and moving me and pulling me and directing me where to go. So I'm grateful to this power. And it's only by this power's grace that I've been separated from alcohol. And what I get to do, and we talked about this earlier, is experience the power that gives me grace. And it's a big difference between just getting grace and experience that great power which gives me grace. And experientially, we can talk about things like that and shout that from the rooftops. I'm grateful today I get to live along the lines of God consciousness or divine consciousness rather than human consciousness, because Lord knows I can't live life on life's terms. I fail miserably. I need a drink to live life on life's terms. I need a drink just to breathe. I need a drink to go to work. I need a drink. And I fail miserably trying to live life on life's terms, but life on God's terms is simple and easy and open. All I need to do is ask. All I need to do is knock on a door, and it's always open. I'm one of those drunks who can never do ordinary things well, but because of Alcoholics Anonymous and passing this message on, I'm able to do extraordinary things well. The spiritual life I have found out makes absolutely no sense to my thinking mind, or anyone's thinking mind. That's why I said earlier, I hope everyone loses their mind for good and all. My mind can't wrap its arms around this power called God or what we do in Alcoholics Anonymous. Can't figure it out. But we can experience it, and I'm grateful for that. To tell you in a general way what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now, how I'm trying to be today, currently where I am. My first drink came when I was 14 years old. I grew up in a town called Brooklyn, New York, where the only requirement for membership there is a pinky ring, sunglasses, and gold jewelry, right? There were guys in that neighborhood who thought, The Godfather was an educational movie, and they were my spiritual leaders when I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous. It was like, hey, how you doing? You want to get sober? Do what we do. A little slower out here than back home. I'll explain each joke as we go along. We got PowerPoint here. I'll give a definition. Now they laugh. The joke's 10 minutes old. Okay. Welcome to Lincoln. Yeah. You know how you remember your first drink like it was a week ago? Because it was that life-changing and that euphoric. I can tell you who was on the corner, the temperature that night, what music was playing. I remember it that clearly because it changed my life forever. I had no idea my first drink was going to lead to many drinks and take me right to hell. I didn't know that road was paved to hell with suffering and humiliation and hurting other people. I just knew the first time I got loaded, it was euphoric. It was Colt 45 beer. My friends were hanging out on the corner that night. And when I was growing up back in New York, back in the day, hanging out was a big thing. Hanging out on a corner or a schoolyard was a rite of passage. You had to belong to a crew or a clique, and you was one for all and all for one. You put money in to get drunk. You pitched in money to get beer. It was us against the world, and that's just the way it went. In fact, when you were hanging out on a corner, and maybe one of us were going to go off to a fancy Ivy League school that fall, we felt really bad for you that we're going to leave all of this hanging out on the corner. But that's just the way it was, you know. It was Colt 45 beer, and I remember that the quote was going around, and I was very reluctant to put my hand in there to drink because of the consequences, mainly from my dad, who had warned me so many times about not hanging out with those bums on the corner and how I would be a product of my environment. But like a good alcoholic, I listened for a while and then came to brainstorm, why not? I want what they have to offer. I watched the older guys roughhousing and talking with the girls and just looking like rebels without a clue, but it looked pretty good to me. It had to be better than what I was experiencing before my first drunk. And I know you guys will identify with this, the square peg trying to fit in a round hole. I had a chatter of 1,000 voices in my head all at once, and I'm trying to listen to all of them. They were delusions of grandeur or usually fear-based and insecure. And wherever I went, there I was, and I couldn't get it right. I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't athletic enough. I didn't have enough muscles. I wasn't tough enough. The girls I was too afraid of. I just couldn't do it. But 6 months prior to my first drunk on this spring summer night, I had a woman at home call her mom. Mom was alcoholic, full-blown alcoholic. We just didn't know what alcoholism was. In fact, even if we did, we probably would have denied it because that came with shame and embarrassment, especially for the females, especially for a mom. Moms don't have alcoholism. That was a male thing. And that's how I grew up. And I watched my mom go from psychiatrist to sanitarium, what we now call treatment centers, after another. And they would medicate her with Valium and more Valium not to drink, but she did both. And I watched her experience this incomprehensible demoralization. And I watched her try to commit suicide several times. And on the morning of January 23rd, 1974, she did it. And I woke up to absolute terror. I remember I was about 14 years old, laying in my lower bunk, and literally, not figuratively, but literally frozen with fear. I don't know if you ever experienced that. I could not move. I wanted to, and I couldn't. And it was the first time I heard my dad cry. And it was through a 911 call to the police screaming on the phone that his wife was dead. And I remember I got punched in the chest as she finally did it. My design for living that early morning was about 5 a.m. was changed. It was removed. My life changed. And this guy called God, that mom would take me to my religious community and go through all the religious things I did as a Catholic and show me how to pray and get on my knees and tell me all things are possible with God. I said, I don't believe this God anymore. This is cruel. He let her suffer, and now he lets her go this way. This is cruel. And on top of that, he even let me say goodbye to her. So off I was with God. I wanted no part of God. And growing up, I really believed that the only people who went to God was sick people went to God, or old people went to God. It wasn't for a man to go to God or walk into a church or pray, not after what he did. And my separation in a sense, started right there from this power. I wasn't aware of that. I just knew off I went into the world, and I'm going to take the world by storm and be a real man's man. And I had no clue, I had no manual how to do that. I was thrown into self-reliance, and for a drunk like me, when I'm in self-reliance, it means I'm experiencing no God or current unmanageability, agnosticism, and fear. And it's this vicious cycle. And the only way I can get out of that vicious cycle, I found out when I drank, it all stopped. The shame, embarrassment, humiliation of having a mom commit suicide was removed. The fear of who I was, no matter where I went, there I was removed. Because when I drank that night, I got taller and better looking. I had beer muscles that night. I turned into Al Pacino by the end of the night. This was a great thing. You know? I had a dad at home, cunning, baffling, and powerful. I've shared from a million podiums the best description of this man. He made Tony Soprano look like Tinkerbell. He was a tough guy, street guy. And if he looked you in the eye and you blinked, you were probably lying. Eyeball to eyeball, do not look up or down because that means you're lying. I was looking up and down and blinking all the time. He walked in the room, I bailed all the time. I was scared to death of this guy. How am I going to measure up to this? I was the firstborn. How do you measure up to this guy who's larger than life? Wherever he went, he was respected. He had friends all over. How do I measure up to this? I want to crawl under a rock and go away. The buffer between him and I was mom, and now she's gone. And being afraid of your dad and having no mom, it's kind of a weird place to be. Until I drank this one spring summer night, and Colt 45 beer started to do what beer does, what alcohol does. I got nice, I got warm, I had the glow, everything was looking okay. I wasn't thinking about mom, who cares about dad, wasn't worried about the cops, I got beer muscles, I had arrived. Bill Wilson says, I had arrived that night. Alcohol did for me quickly what I could never do for myself, and that was allow me to be a part of, and the voices in the head shut down. You want to talk about art? I'm an artist. You want to talk about music? I'm a musician. You want to talk about athletics? I'm a jock. I mean, you tell me, we'll do it. Under the influence. Alcohol worked on my alcoholism. That's why I drank. It was not a problem. Very often we think with newcomers, we tell them alcohol is a problem right from the get-go. No, it was a solution. And right now, if I run around in Alcoholics Anonymous untreated long enough, I will look for the old medicine, Mr. Boston Blackberry Brandy, to work on my untreated alcoholism. See, what can happen to us, it happened to me, is before I pick up a drink and I'm in AA untreated, knocking out 10 meetings a week, double-digit sobriety, it really doesn't make a difference to alcoholism because it's cunning, baffling, powerful, and patient. It'll lay around and wait 15, 20 years. If I'm untreated, if I don't go drink right away, alcoholism will go underground and resurface in other areas. They're called the sprees, the thinking sprees, the fear sprees, the anger sprees, the sex sprees, the money sprees, the food spree. And I emerge remorseful with the firm resolution. I'm not going to go there again. If my wife finds me, I'm divorced. If my wife finds out what I'm doing, I'm divorced. If my boss finds out, I'm going to get fined. It goes on. And we kind of shake it off, and then we're restless, ill, and discontented. I'm putting on my AA game face when I walk into a meeting. And as soon as I get back into the parking lot, we lost our sound. We good here? Is this my get out of here already? Okay. There we go. Okay, thank you. Alcoholism go underground and resurface in other areas, even though I'm making meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. My first 6 months in here, I looked like a drunk without a drink in me. I was on every spree imaginable. And in AA, the greatest predator I've experienced is this thinking mind. It doesn't care how long I'm sober. It's always talking to us. I'll lay odds from here to Vegas. Most of you guys are listening to me with one ear and the other 100 voices with the other ear. And we argue with it. We debate with it. We bargain with it. We go into old resentments with it. And it's nonstop. When I drank alcohol, even those voices shut down. But I'm very much aware, because of some of my experiences sober, that they will come back, and they will come back on steroids and keep talking to me, because my mind wants me dead, will settle for me drunk. That's what it does. The mind will take me back to that which is killing me. And I'm always thinking. Biggest addiction in the world is probably thinking, because we're always thinking, all the time thinking. Always have drama, got some drama going on. You want to hear my drama? No, how about your drama? I know. You and I, let's invent some drama, and let's think about it while we're doing it. On the way here, who drove? Just a show of hands, who drove here alone in their car tonight? Anyone? Right. Okay. That's what you think. He's going to pull the mic again in about 2 minutes. Watch. Because if you think about your ride over here alone, how many people were talking to you and you were talking back to them on the way over here? Why am I going to this for? Why am I still married to this? I don't understand. Well, I hate my job. I got to do something. They should ask me to speak. After all, I'm Moses, and you keep driving. And when you get back in the car, you know who's waiting for you? 45 other voices. From when we were 5, 15, our first love. We got fantasies with our future ex in the car, you know, with all this stuff going on. Right? Future ex. Did you get that one? And so I run to another meeting, and I feel good for the hour, and I get some camaraderie at a sacred fellowship, and I meet some friends, some like-minded folks. And the meeting ends, and I go back into the car, and I got to go home. And whether we live with someone or not, we still have to go home. Because when the voices are going on, even though I'm with somebody, married with someone, there's separation. Because I'm just kind of dealing with them because I got all these other voices that are really my master. And they're going to determine when I'm going to make love, when I'm going to take a shower, when I'm going to eat, when I'm going to go to work, if I'm going to stay with them a long time, if I'm going to plan a divorce, all the voices. They got my whole life set up, and I honor, okay, what are we doing next? And I come back to the meeting and ask, hey, Pete, how you doing? I'm great. Everything's beautiful, man. Everything's so good. No, I'm not doing good at all. But the ego has reemerged, has reconstructed, and will not allow me to tell someone I'm not doing well because I have 20 years or 15 years or 10 years or 30 years. And little by slowly, we start to die. I'm down by the beach a lot. And something came to me one time, a great analogy for what happens to many of us in Alcoholics Anonymous. I was out in the water, and I was playing around in the water, a little undercurrent. And I had my beach chair say where this podium is. And I'm out there about 15, 20 minutes or so. And I turned around. I was getting time to come back to my beach chair on the sand. And I couldn't find it. And I looked way over to the left, maybe 50 yards, and there was my beach chair. I drifted. I didn't even feel it. Little by slowly, the current took me. It's what happens to us in Alcoholics Anonymous. We're going to meetings, making coffee, saying hellos, sponsoring people, but we're not working with spiritual disciplines. We don't have fidelity to this power called God. We have a lot of other gods. We have pride and idolatry gets in the way. We worship other things, my money, my relationship, my new car, my job, me. I've created my own reputation, but no worship to God. And little by slowly, I drift, and one day I wake up and I'm really thirsty. Or I get caught on a spree and have to run for cover. And I say, how did this happen? It happens in Alcoholics Anonymous. And meetings don't treat my alcoholism as sacred as they are. God could and would if he was sought. What am I doing to seek? What am I doing to grow in understanding and effectiveness? I share about this because I've suffered from alcoholism in AA. My first 6 months, how I didn't drink is only by God's grace. In Alcoholics Anonymous, sober, I was unemployed, almost filed for bankruptcy, went through a divorce, had a couple of health scares, watched my dad get real sick, another health scare. Because I'm sober doesn't mean Powerball's coming my way and the relationship is on its way. It means life happens. But how am I going to move through it? How am I going to navigate through it? Alone or with God and you? That's a choice. I lost power, choice, control over the drink, but not what I do in Alcoholics Anonymous. We have a 12 and 12. We have big books. We have literature. We have this. Every time we walk in, every time I walk into an AA meeting, and we still have people dying in Alcoholics Anonymous, suffering while they're sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. And my question is, why? Why? Are we constitutionally incapable of being honest? Not all of us. And we settle. We settle. And we roll over. And we die. Yet on the flip side of that is we embrace this power called God, the instructions in the big book, and we get awakened and we get to heal the lives of others when we get reborn from the inside out. We get to do the 12-step call. We get to go into a drunk's family where they look like they're shattered and broken from this thing called alcoholism. And we go work with that drunk and we take him or her through the 12 steps. They wake up. And the same way we were driven to drink, we're moved to go touch the lives of others, to give. As messengers of God, I'm not here to be served, but to serve. And you work with that drunk and you go back in that house 30 days later, 60 days later, a year later. The whole house has changed. The whole house is different. It becomes a sober house. It becomes a God house. That's healing. Because based on statistics, a lot of us shouldn't even be in here tonight. Right? We had near misses, many of us, near misses, over and over and over again. We get this sacred chair in a meeting called Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not hanging around. I want to seek this power. I want to experience more of this power and then go talk about it and not hide it in the back room somewhere, not hide the big book in the back room somewhere. I can't tell you how many meetings I go to, and some of our members in AA don't want to talk about the book. Don't want to talk about the big book. Don't bring that book in here. Don't even talk about the steps in this meeting, and claim to be upstanding members of our sacred fellowship. Really? Bill, in about the first 40, put it together. So you're telling me you know better than Bill, the first 40, and God. How arrogant have we gotten, some of us, huh? Especially when a newbie comes in, got a big book under their arm, they're excited, and we say, you don't need that book. Really? Where's that written? And who made you God? And are you going to pay for their funeral when they go drink and die? See, it's a little wake-up call for some of us, huh? I knew none of this when I was new. I did know this. I drank alcohol on the corner of 75th Street and 20th Avenue in Brooklyn one spring summer night, and I got rocketed. I hit the fourth dimension. I got to a place out there that's indescribably wonderful, and it did for me what I couldn't do for myself. And when the following week rolled around, following Saturday, I wasn't waiting. I wanted to get drunk to capture that feeling, to get there, because I liked the effect produced by alcohol. It worked on my alcoholism. I was fearless. And Saturday rolled around, the following Saturday and Friday and Saturday and Friday, Saturday and Sunday. Then I had the idea, let's get this going on Thursday. Then became Wednesday, and I'm drinking. And as Bill says in his story, his drinking assumed more serious proportions. That's exactly what happened to me. And there were many unhappy scenes in my home. I have two younger brothers at home. Until my alcoholism started to work on me, they idolized me. They felt safe around me. And my dad really didn't have too many problems with his oldest son. But progression does what progression does. And little by slowly, they were starting to look at me cross-eyed. What's wrong with him? What's wrong with my son? My brothers became afraid of me and then became embarrassed of me, because when I was drinking at the beginning, I was a nasty drunk. A lot of ugly language, a lot of violence. I was famous for punching holes in walls and throwing things. All this pent-up rage came out when I got drunk. And one day I woke up and I decided I needed money to go get drunk, so I stole from my dad like a coward. Because I didn't have it to go out and steal in the streets. So I stole from people who trusted me and loved me. And I stole from my dad. And I stole some checks out of his checkbook. And I would go down to the local store, sign his name. They knew my dad. They cash it for me. I did it again and again and again. I knew nothing about checking statements. These things came back in the mail. And then he came looking for me. And this is not the guy you want looking for you. Son or no son. And I was hanging out in the Lower East Side of Manhattan with this young lady. We were in love because we got drunk the night before, and there she was. Guys, you'll know this one. When you're drinking, she looks like Bo Derek. And when you come to the next morning, she looks like Bo Diddley, and you wonder you got into that jam. And I'm sitting in the car with this woman, and my dad drove up and got out of the car, and he was angry. His department shouted he was going to do some bad things to me. And I started to run away, and I told her, honey, you talk to him, that's my dad. And he caught me, and I went to my first treatment center. And I knew nothing about treatment. I remember taking Mom to these places, these hospitals, these sanitariums, and they did shock treatments and medicated her and all this weird stuff. But treatment for alcoholism, I thought I was going to a psych ward, and there I was. It was really interesting. My first treatment center, I drive up and I realize it's the same exact place we took my mom over and over and over again. That was a sobering moment. And I went in there for 28 days. Back in the day, that was 28-day model. You go into treatment and you did a lot of things that they try to help you with. I had not conceded to my innermost self I was an alcoholic. I wasn't even clear what an alcoholic was. I had no powdered goods in me yet, just drinking. A lot of trouble because of drinking. And my dad thought maybe because Mom died too young, you're all twisted up, so we're going to put you in this place, remove the drinking, and some therapy would work. Treatment was nice little vacation. They fed me. Little detox, Mickey Mouse detox. I snapped right back. I was really young. And they took us to a gymnasium for physical fitness, music therapy and art therapy and all these weird therapies and all these charts and graphs. And they took us to this one gym about the size of this room with a basketball hoop on one end and a basketball hoop on the other and one basketball. And they said, go play. And we had crackheads and pillheads and dope fiends and drunks all detoxing. They said, go play. And the basketball rolled from one end of the gym to the other. And I said, I'm not getting it, you get it. And the ball bounced. And the potheads went, when they saw the ball roll, they went, wow, man, that's good. And the crackheads were going, oh my God, look at the ball, I can't believe it. So we went outside and smoked a cigarette, and that was pretty much physical therapy for the day. And 28 days later, I got out and they gave me a graduation ceremony. I'm graduating from treatment. Graduating from treatment. You're a good drug addict. You're a good alcohol. And I had that young lady meet me at the door. I said, honey, I'm coming home. Like I did 5 years in a state pen. Honey, I'm coming home. Bring a bottle. And they told me to go to AA. She met me, I cracked the seal, I drank, and the allergy was on me again. I suffer from a threefold illness, physical, mental, and spiritual. The obsession never left me, even though I was in treatment. Being physically separate, my experience has been this. Being physically separated from alcohol has little to do with getting recovered. It just means I'm physically separate. I've been locked up a lot of times, waiting to see a judge. Went to the ringers in the cell. I was physically separated after 3 days getting to see the judge. I was not sponsorship material. I couldn't wait to drink. My mind, my obsession is so powerful that I would spend times in treatment, 28 days, 9 weeks, and the obsession was so powerful, I would feel like I physically needed a drink when my body did not need a drink. And just taking the booze away is removing a symptom of a greater problem. I found that out firsthand. The obsession phenomenon called craving and this God problem, the spiritual problem. And then only till I got right with God did it take care of the mental and the physical. I mean, it's that simple. Get God, and there goes the obsession, and the phenomenon called craving's gone. How do I get God? It's in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. But I had to hit a bottom of all bottoms for me. I had to get to the place where alcohol became the great motivator. My alcoholism beat me into a state of, please help me, reasonableness. And it took a lot of years of scraping my knees on the ground and being homeless in 1988 and a panhandler in 1988, where I knew AA didn't work because I went there, and my religious community failed because I went there, and psychiatrists and doctors in treatment don't work. I was really at the end of the rope in 1988. It was a long road to get there. And I hit the streets and I went right back to the same vicious cycle, and I continued to drink. And little by slowly, my family got sicker, and I made my second, third, fourth, and fifth treatment center. My fifth treatment center, I was in there for 9 weeks. I was separated from booze and some other substances for 9 weeks. After my fifth treatment center, I didn't return to powder anymore. The detoxes went just got off, almost killed me. My fifth treatment center, I go in 9 weeks, I'm separated from alcohol and some other things. And I did push-ups and sit-ups, and I went to the group, and I actually played basketball. I did everything I was supposed to, because on the way in, I had conceded to my innermost self. I knew I was in trouble. But having a powerful desire not to drink is of absolutely no avail, my big book tells me. I found that out firsthand. Having a powerful desire not to drink is going to bring me to Dale and say, can you help me? I need a sponsor. Bring me to an AA meeting. Mars, can you take me to treatment? I'm in trouble. It'll get me above ground for just a short time, but my alcoholism is still pursuing me. And only God could and would, if he was sought, keep me away from that. So I go into treatment for 9 weeks. My fifth treatment center, physically separated. I get discharged on a Saturday. Monday, I'm sucking on a pint of Mr. Boston like my life depended on it. Now, prior to that, my dad showed up and got me this apartment in Brooklyn. Little studio apartment, furnished it for me. Bought me some nice clothes and shoes and boxes. I was a longshoreman. I was a dock worker in the shipyards, making great money. My dad was the big shot down there. I was known as Vic's son. He had this impeccable reputation. It was a job that was impossible to lose. We were one of the most powerful unions in the country at the time. I got fired. My dad said, you're fired, don't come back, because of what I brought into his life. But he did get me this little apartment, and he told me, if you behave, is what he said, and you straighten out, I'll see what I do about getting your job back. It was a great source of income. I was a young kid making a lot of money. So we furnished this place, and in a short time, I brought the Bowery in. A lot of us can identify with that, bringing that kind of element into this place. I stopped bathing. I kept drinking. My bed was soiled and bloodstained. There wasn't a comforter and nice pillows on it like I sleep now. It was a soiled mattress with no comforter, no pillows. You just crashed out and passed out. Bathing was the last thing on my mind. I had filthy laundry all over the place. And this is how I was living in this place. And I stopped paying rent because my money was going to the liquor store. I'll figure it out tomorrow. And I'm living in this little place, sneaking in through the back window, sneaking in through the back door so the landlord doesn't hear me. No lights in the place. He's banging on my door because he knows I'm home. And I'm living like this. I have a wonderful family, maybe an hour drive from me, who are living nice and going to school and doing all the things. Me, I'm living on the Bowery, even though I'm not there yet. I was going to get there. And after a short time of living in this place, I got thrown out, and I went to live on the streets. Didn't have a job. My family learned about this word called enablers, and they stopped enabling, and they cut me off completely, and I hated them. One of the last times I saw my dad before I got into my last treatment center was he swung by he saw me, and as he's driving by, I flag him down, I get in his car, and I ask him, I don't say, can I come home? I want to go to treatment. I ask him for $20. And he said no. And he says, and don't call me until you want to get well. And I get out of my car. And I despised him for that. I hated him for that. I love him today for that because he saved my life. Called raising the bottom. And off I went. Now, I'm not the toughest guy on the block. I don't do the streets well. I was out there for a little while. You know, sleeping in abandoned buildings and rooftops is no picnic. But when I had a pint and I can kind of wash the night away, it wasn't too bad. But I was afraid of my own shadow. And I would do things like panhandle and just a lot of ugly things just to keep the drunk going because I was getting sick when I didn't drink. This was new. I would become violently ill like our book talks about. This was new territory. This happened to other people. This doesn't happen in the Marinelli household. It just doesn't. But there I was, walking around in the same clothes. I met some woman, and till this day, I don't know why, on God's earth, she took to me. But she did. And she was a barmaid and worked in this place in Staten Island, New York. And right up above was a motel, real swanky joint. Right? And she would come up from her shift and crash out and let me stay with her. And every once in a while, there'd be a knock at the door. There'd be a little tray with a couple of drinks for me, and I'd drink them and go down. And then come to again. Did you ever get to the place where liquor's not getting you drunk and you can't get sober? Where you're just there? One morning, she came up from her shift, and I went to her purse. I had a plan. I was going to go into her purse and steal all her money and get out of there. And what I found in her pocketbook was a bunch of pills in a bottle. And I realized that maybe there is a God because I can get out. And I ate what was ever in those pills. I don't know how many there were. They were Valium. I ate a bunch of them and washed them down. And I remember this clearly. There was this quiet excitement, this thing that it's going to end. It's over. And I was excited about that. Now I'm about 25, 26. And I think about a 25 or 26-year-old kid looking to off himself, how pitiful that is, especially when we've been exposed to this, called Alcoholics Anonymous, been exposed to treatment. I figured there's just no hope for me. I'm hurting too many people. I can't do it. I can't do this thing. I'm a mistake. And I ate the pills and I got back into bed, and God interrupted my death because I came to. And the first thing I did when I came to and I realized where I was is curse God. Why are you making me live? Why are you doing this to me for? Because now I know what I have to do. I need to go steal and get money and keep the drunk going. I can't do it. Bill says in his story, the courage to do battle was not there. Was not there. It was long gone. But God orchestrates wonderful things. God had to get my attention, and He will get our attention in the way we're going to listen to it. And for me, I had to go to the edge of a cliff where my nails were dug in, and there was nowhere else to go. Reservations, lurking notions, gone. I'm dug into the edge of a cliff, and God had to take me right there to say to her, have I got your attention now? I hit the streets. I made treatment number 6. Day and a half in my 6th treatment center. I signed myself out, AMA. I couldn't stay in treatment. I can't drink. I can't go to treatment. I can't go to AA. What is wrong? I was plotting my own suicide again. By the way, when I was in that hotel, that motel, something interesting happened to me. I ate the pills, got back into bed, and I'm drinking with it, and I'm feeling myself go off. I'm just kind of nodding out. And I had this little moment of clarity. My mom took her life the same exact way. And the moment of clarity was, this is how she died. And when I was growing up, we were told by my uncle and my family that Mom did this because she was weak. She was a woman. Men are strong, women are weak. Men don't do this. That was the belief system, especially the Marinelli men. We would never do something like that. I thought suicide was a gender issue. Until I did that and I had this moment of clarity and I realized this has nothing to do with gender. This is alcoholism. This is what you guys told me about. This is what they told me about in treatment. The incomprehensible demoralization, jails, institutions, and death. Here I am. They were telling me the truth, but it was too late. And God interrupted my death, and off I went, and on the streets again, and I knew it was over. I was outside the Port Authority. Till this night, I still have no idea how I got to the Port Authority in Midtown Manhattan. Not a good place. A lot of colorful characters, strange people running around. A lot of homeless people. I was on the 9th Avenue side of the Port Authority. God will strike us sober when we're blind drunk. It's called the flimsy reed. That proves to be the loving and powerful hand of God. It will come when your kids say, Mommy, Daddy, what's wrong with you? It'll come when the boss says, we're going to fire you if you don't straighten out. It'll come with an arrest. It'll come sometimes. It'll just come. We're driving in a car, or maybe we just hit that bottom. It's the wake-up call. And there I was outside the Port Authority. And it was as if my life flashed before my face. I was struck sober, and I realized what I turned into. My worst nightmare. All I can think about was I want to die constantly. I can't get drunk enough. I can't get sober. I can't even kill myself. Where am I going to go? I'm living life on life's terms, and I'm failing miserably. And I hate God, because in that moment, I cursed God. I spat at God. I scoffed at God. I despised God, and He got all of it. I'm so grateful. My God is an all-forgiving and all-loving God, because if my God was keeping score, I would not be your speaker tonight. I'd be somewhere else. All forgiving, all love, no opposite. A builder of bridges is what my God is. And if I'm too weak, He will carry me over, like Footprint says. Can I do that as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, even with my human frailties? Can I build bridges even though you might revile me? Can I build bridges for those who gossip about me? Can I be a builder of bridges? Because that's what my God did for me. Kept building a bridge, and I'll carry you over. And I kept scoffing and hating Him. And in 1988, when I wound up in back of another hallway, my Heavenly Father knocked on the door and says, are you ready now? And my nails were dug in. There was nowhere else to go. And He knew it. If my God was a fair God, you have a different speaker here tonight. I know a lot of other people did a lot better job with their life. Churchgoers, family men, good sons, good daughters. They should have, entrance to the pearly gates. Not a guy like me. But for me personally, my God went to the cross for people like me. Yeah? And that's how I get here tonight. God will refuse to lose one of His sheep from the herd to go get him, and He'll send us to go get it. That's what we do in AA. We go get the lost sheep, bring them home. Bring them home to us. What we do in AA is we go home. The process of recovery is about going home. And we get to worship God, because I'm not worshiping God. That means the world has to worship me, and that's not a good place to go. So we become agents for God. We go and bring God's children back to Him, like you guys did for me. June 23rd, 1988 showed up. I was not planning stopping that day. It was bad, but it's going to be another day of drinking and getting money and drinking and passing out. Hopefully I'll die, just something. But something changed that day. My mind stopped talking to me. It happens to all of us. And it hit me, this moment of clarity and the breakdown. And I remember rolling into a ball and heaving with crying. I couldn't do it anymore. And I says, please take me from this. I don't want to die, were the words I hollered at God. I don't want to die. I was not thinking about Alcoholics Anonymous or going back to treatment. I just don't want to die. I gave up on AA and church and all that other stuff and doctors. I just don't want to die. It was the first time in my life I can recall I wanted not to die. I was trying to off myself forever. And the words I got back to me. And only if you have this kind of experience with God, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't, just pray you do. Because we'll never be the same. We get internally reorganized. We're on a different level of consciousness when we finally wake up to God's talking to me. And too often in AA, even a new person comes in and someone says, a new person or even an old timer say, you know, I think I heard God talking to me. And someone will shut it down. You're hearing voices. Well, when did you become God? God speaks to us in a group conscious. Our second tradition talks about that. We pray to hear God. We listen to our sponsor. Hopefully God's working through him or her. God speaks to us. Who else are you going to talk to? And he set this thing up. He could have gave this to the greatest minds of our time, the greatest medical people of our time, the greatest religious leaders of our time. He gave it to another drunk to go get another drunk because only you and I know where we've been. This is the only fellowship, the only place in the world I can tell you about the most god-awful, horrible, disgusting things I've done. And you say, give me a number, I'll give you a call. I mean, only in AA. Right? Yeah. I mean, you tell civilians about some of the stuff we did, they run. They just, okay, go seek help, I'll see you later. We just say, you want to hang out? We're going to a party, you know. It's almost a badge of honor how sick we were. Oh, see, Joe, he was really sick. You should ask him to sponsor you. I mean. The words I got, I'll never forget it. I was rolled up in a ball, leaning against a wall in this hallway. I was at the end, the bitter end. Experientially, I was getting it. It wasn't some fantasy story. I was there, knocking on death's door. If I live to be 100, I'll never be as old as they. God put me into Alcoholics Anonymous. But there I was, and there was no one. It's an awful feeling when you're homeless, AA doesn't work, treatment doesn't work, medical stuff doesn't work, there's no one to call. You have no money, you have no food in your belly. My diet consisted of boosting a pack of Twinkies every so often. I was about 130 pounds. I was bleeding from places I shouldn't be bleeding from. How lonely and how dark it is before the dawn. Didn't know that then. God was reorganizing me. Our spiritual experience, our spiritual awakening transformation is guaranteed to us in the big book as a result of the steps. We know that. But what gets it generated? What kickstarts it? What's the catalyst? It's the worst moment of our life. Whether we're in AA or out there when we say, I got to do something. This don't work anymore. Please help, which is the plea to God. If I live to be 100, I'll never be as honest as that moment on June 23rd, 1988, when everything got stopped. And I was completely out of my mind because the words I got in this ear was, enough, I have other work for you to do. That quiet little voice. And as quiet as the thunderous silence, when God speaks, it's a quiet, steady voice, and we listen to it. It cuts right through everything. I was listening for the first time in my life to a different voice. It wasn't the voice of the mind where resistance lies, and my resentments and fears and beliefs and perceptions and conceptions about everything was separated from that for the first time. When we're out of our mind, we feel freedom, not relief, freedom. Because if I'm out of my mind, I'm doing great because I'm listening to God. I'm walking with God. And it was in the worst moment of my life. Enough, I have other work for you to do. I was in AA a handful of years before I got what that meant. It's what I do for a living and what I do in AA. Serve. Go get my children, bring them back to me. Teach and always be teachable. My purpose in life is made clear, and because of that, I can wear the world like a loose garment. I walk with my God, and because I'm clear that I'm known by my Creator, I'm clear that you have one too. And it's probably the same one. We may go up a different mountain to get there, but it's the same one. So I might disagree with you, but I can love you from a distance. That's okay. Enough, I have other work for you to do. And I got this moment of clarity, sanity, a helpful thought, and that was to call my dad. I haven't seen this guy in a long time, but the moment was telling me the only one that's going to come get you is him. And God knew just what to do. And I hobbled to a few phones to call him collect. I had no money. Call him collect. I have these crying jags. At the same moment, this story was shared with me at my first AA birthday by my dad. My dad was in a town called Atlantic City gambling, spending a weekend with his wife and having some fun. And he says, I've had a feeling in my gut that you were in trouble. And he told his wife, I got to get back to the neighborhood. My kid's in trouble, meaning me. And off he went, looking around. God will connect the dots. My dad drove up, got out of the car. His department this time shouted he was a man looking for a son who was lost. It was the prodigal son. And the first thing I did in this condition that I was say, Dad, I'm okay. My dad got close and I collapsed. And this guy held me up. Now, it's an interesting thing that happened here. This I was made aware of, and I always like to talk about this. Our book talks about how our roots grasp new soil. We're inwardly reorganized, and that comes through the destruction of the false. To experience the truth, the false got to die. The false, my ideas of how man should be, how a woman should be, how my life should be, how much money I should be. My life is no longer any of my business. It started back then. My life currently is none of my business. It's God's business. I don't want to be in charge of my life. Responsible and accountable, yes. Where God sends me, God sends me. And it starts like this. And there I was, collapsing my dad's arms, and he's holding me up and saying, almost in a mantra, I'm not going to lose my son to this. Kept repeating that. He's not a God guy. He's a tough guy. He's a street guy. But he was broken too, wide open, which was a great thing. And I do remember it was the first time, maybe I was this high, where I actually had a hug from this guy. Now, when you're a kid, as a young boy, when mom hugs you, the world's a great place. When you're 8, 9 years old, 5 years old, and mama holds you on her lap, I mean, you can do anything. When you get a little older, you're looking for the old man. You want to get right with your dad. And my dad was like Mickey Mantle, but he was always there. And we were brought to this place where I was able to have my old man hold me and me hold him, and we were one. And I remember thinking, oh my God, this feels so right. I'm so safe right now. Now I'm 28, but I'm going on like 12. I feel safe. For the first time in my life, I feel safe. I hope we don't let go. It's my dad. And off I went to my 7 treatment center. And I'm in this treatment center, same place in Long Island, New York, 10 days or so. My alcoholism was not done. It was still galloping. Bill talks about in the Mayflower Hotel with the insidious insanity of the first drink. It was coming back. I'm thinking, I got to get out of this treatment center. One more drink, one more little drinky poo, and I'm going to be okay. And I'll go to group, I'll go to gym, talk about my inner child and all this good stuff. And they sent me out to Minnesota, and I was put back together again. There was a meeting out there called the Three Legacies meeting. I met some giants there. And little by slowly, I started to hear about this book. And I was brought home with about 11 months sober to my first home group, the Free Spirit Group. And my first sponsor was a bulldog. He didn't care about my feelings. He didn't care about my issues. He didn't care if I didn't like him. You want what I got, you do what I do. That's it. Or get somebody else. He didn't have to have a process group because I was upset. We didn't have to go to diner and talk for 4 hours and read Acceptance out of 449. We started from the cover and guaranteed me a spiritual transformation, and he was right. Because it burst upon me one day. I bathe twice a day. I eat. I go to work again. I have money in my pocket. I haven't thought about drinking in, I don't know the last time I thought about drinking. I'm sponsoring a couple of guys too. I still have the same sponsor. I haven't lost my job. My apartment's clean. Oh my God. How did this happen? I go into a place, they say, welcome. They don't say, oh no, get out. How did this happen? The spiritual life makes no sense. It doesn't make sense. Common thinking becomes uncommon thinking. The whole thing is upside down. And one of the greatest gifts I've got is knowing that I am known by my Creator. I'm not trying to be the landlord of my own little kingdom and only let the people I want in, and God's on the outer fringes. And when I'm in trouble, the 12 and 12 talks about it. God's son becomes this pinch hitter. It's not that way. Fidelity to God. I pray it's the most important event of my day, not one of the 10,000 things I do during the day. I don't pray in the car on the way to work. I'll talk to God. But my prayer is attention to this power. And give it grace and dignity. I have set up an altar. I have my book. I have my scripture. I have a lot of things that I work with that I get to do. I would go to Mass every so often, and I want to be careful about traditions here. And I wouldn't go, and I'd go, and I wouldn't go, and I'd go to just to light candles and get out of there. And I love my God. But some of the stuff that was going on in my religious community I had problems with. We know the headlines. A lot of contempt. And I'm going through the work with my sponsor a little over a year ago. And we're talking about this, and it's in my inventory, and I'm sharing my fourth, and I tell them what I'm writing about, and I get to my fifth step, and we're reading it, and I have a lot of resentments towards my religious community, not towards my God. And this is how my life got spun around again. A wall comes down, and we get freer. My sponsor said something like this to me. He said, "You have a lot of anger towards your religious community." I said, "Yes, but I love my guys, I know that." He said, "But let me ask you something. You go to meetings regularly?" I says, "Yeah." "Is every meeting a great meeting?" I says, "No." "Are some sicker than others in AA?" "Yeah." "Weren't you sick when you got here?" "Yeah." "This 13 stepping in AA?" "Yeah." You keep going back, you keep bringing a solution, you keep supporting it, and you nourish it, you nurture it, right? "Yeah." He said, "How come you can't do that with your church?" I had no answer. I had no answer. And I knew I had an amends to make to my religious community about some of the gossiping I was doing. So I went on a Saturday where they have this thing called confession. I sat down with the priest. And I said, "I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I need to get some things clear with you. I've said some ugly things," and I went on and on and on. And as if God put this man in my life, he didn't give me the riot act and say, "You need to, you're going to hell." He said, "I understand all of that." He gave me some pennies. He says, "Would you do one thing?" I asked, "What can I do to make this right?" He said, "Will you do one thing for me?" He said, "Will you come to Mass just tomorrow morning?" Okay. Now, my better half is a big church goer, and I said, "I'm a little afraid to go in. Will you come with me?" And she walked me in, like I was going to daycare for the first day. You know. Tough guy from New York. "Come, could you take me to church?" You know. Okay. I walk in, and it begins, and out of nowhere, I start weeping. Weeping the entire hour. And when I left and the bells are playing in the background, I'm weeping, but I'm euphoric. And I went back the next week. I went back the next week, and I went back the next week. And when I'm on the road, if I have some time, I'll go to a service in town, or if I get back in time, I'll make a late Mass, and I'm getting there. And I found some AA members there. And I start to know the priest. And then I was asked one day, "Would you like to be a lector? And we'd like to see if you'd be interested in being a Eucharistic minister." And on Sunday mornings, I read when I'm asked, and I serve communion. I hope I didn't break a tradition with that story. How did this happen? It's one of the bright spots of my week, walking into my religious community, getting to serve, getting to be a part of it, and still the parishioners do what they do, like we do. Get into the parking lot, we cut each other off, you know. And my deal is, so what? If I really claim this with my lips, do my actions back it up? It's not what goes in my mouth that will defile me, it's what goes out which will defile me. No longer wavering, not double-minded. Okay, so what? So that's how they do it. I'll be here next week and offer a solution. And I get to do that, and I get to do AA, and I get to have my own God. And what happens, our book says, getting reborn. I can never be wrong, go back into mama's womb again. This is it. But we get reborn from the inside out. And where we were once perishable, we become imperishable. And when we were sown dishonor, we get glory. When we were sown with weakness, we get power. And what looked like when I walked in here, no spiritual power, I get raised with this power called God. And we go out and touch the lives of others. And we commence shoulder to shoulder upon this journey, this glorious journey in the sacred rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm blessed more than I deserve. But my God is always seeking. My God's always pursuing me. And he's always giving me, always giving me. And all I have to do is say, "I'm here, Father, I'm ready." And then he says, "Go give it all to someone else." That's what we do in Alcoholics Anonymous. That's what they do in my AA. I hope to always stay teachable and give this away with the same love and gratitude that you give it to me with. Since I arrived here Friday, you guys have opened your arms to me. I don't know many of you, but you said welcome. Did you have lunch? Would you like some coffee? Are you being taken care of? That happens in my Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's a treat for me to be here. That's all I got. Peace. Thank you.